All right, well, we're just waiting a few minutes for everyone to join. Thanks for joining us today. We'll start in 2 minutes, so let's give people some time. Again, thank you for joining. We're just giving it one more minute to let more people come in the room, and then we'll get the webinar started. Okay, we'll give it another minute. Great, so it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'll introduce myself. Thanks for joining, everyone. This is going to be a webinar on condensers. It's part of our Ace Your Science series. My name's Adrian Soto, so I'm the Northeast Sales Manager with Ace Glass. I've been with the company for almost a year and a half now. Year and a half will be June, so next month. And I cover New England, so the Northeast Territory. I'm a chemist, as everyone else is here at Ace Glass. My degrees, I have a BS in chemistry. I've done some research with solid phase peptide synthesis. I did a little bit of protein purification. So I've worked with condensers a bit as an undergrad. Let's see. So Ace Glass, what I like about Ace Glass, I'd say, we're a small company with great support. So all of my colleagues, being chemists, we can really get into helping our customers and each other when it comes to the chemistry and their applications, which sometimes can be a little bit complicated. We've also been in business for 90 years as a company, so we have a lot of history and a lot of great customers who love working with us. So we're going to do a 15-minute seminar followed by a Q&A. So please feel free to go in the questions tab, submit your questions, and we will go through it at the end and try to answer as many as possible. So at Ace, we've been blowing glass for 90 plus years. So we have an extensive list of products. We actually have over 13,000. But here are some of our main products. And as you can tell, an essential category listed here is condensers. In our actual hard copy catalog, we have something to the tune of 50 plus pages of different condensers. But I'm only going to go through some of the main condensers today since we only have a little bit of time. So starting with the most basic question, what is a condenser? They're essential pieces of lab glassware used to cool hot vapors. So in chemistry, we're often trying to manipulate the different phases of a molecule from their gaseous state, liquids, solids, and of course, converting a substance from its gaseous state back into its liquid state through cooling is what we call condensation. So this is achieved by passing a coolant. As you can see in this picture, the coolant's going to be in blue. These are both the same condensers. They're called Liebig condensers, sorry, which I will discuss a little bit later. But you pass the coolant around a vapor path. Here, the vapor path is going to be in the middle, and that facilitates heat exchange. So they're critical components and processes like distillation, which we have here on the right, where you're separating liquids, and reflux here on the left, where you're heating reactions for extended periods of time as to not lose a solvent and to complete the reaction and to not lose concentration of reactants. So key considerations when you're choosing a condenser, boiling point of your solvent, how much cooling you need, how cold does your condenser need to be to get the job done, and of course, your specific application. Are you distilling, as you see here on the right, refluxing? Are you evaporating, which is used often with a rotary evaporator? So the condensers we're discussing today are typically borosilicate. Borosilicate is renowned for its resistance to thermal stress because it has a low thermal expansion coefficient. And basically, all that means a low thermal expansion coefficient just means that the material, in this case, borosilicate, it's going to expand very little when heated, and it's going to contract very little when cooled. So borosilicate, in comparison to soft glass, just to kind of put it into context, has about a third of the thermal expansion coefficient. It's got less of that coefficient, meaning it resists that that stress to heat a lot more than soft glass would. Um, it's also smooth and non-porous, which makes it easy to clean. It minimizes the residue of chemicals, and of course, it's inert, so it's ideal for these applications. I'll start with some of the most basic condensers are air reflux condensers, and here we have two different versions. The one on the left, and just to explain what these are in comparison to the others, it's just a glass tube. There's no jacket. There's no coolant other than the ambient air on the outside. So it's going to be cooled by the ambient air in your environment. So the one on the left is our standard air reflux mini lab series. It's for smaller volumes. It's not very long. On the right, we have a different type of air reflux condenser. It's going to be the same concept, but it's got a lot of surface area, as you can see with those ripples. You don't need chillers or recirculators. There's no risk of flooding. It's going to be more cost effective, more eco-friendly. With the condenser on the right, if you can imagine stretching out the glass to make it a straight tube, you'd have a much longer glass column. So you got a lot of surface area there and a lot of room for heat to dissipate through. So it's a very simple design. These condensers, they can be suitable for higher boiling point solvents above 150C. Now, that's not a hard number because there's a lot of variables with condensers. So it really depends on the length of the condenser, the diameter, the coolant. But because there isn't any coolant other than the air, there is a high delta T, a high difference between the boiling vapor, which is going to be very hot, and that ambient air. And you need that higher temperature difference for effective condensation. So you're going to see as we get into more effective cooling with some of the other condensers, which may have more coolant abilities, higher surface area, you can actually cool more volatile, lower boiling point temperatures. But these numbers that I'm throwing out there aren't hard numbers. You can do your own research and kind of figure out which type of condenser can condensate which boiling points that you're working with and which solvents. So let's see. The only limitation with these is that they may have a lower cooling efficiency due to the air being the coolant with the air reflux. So you're really depending on the ambient air in the room. Let's see. So Liebig, these are considered the first condensers. They're simple and perhaps the most common. Not as simple, obviously, as the air reflux, but these were invented or designed a long time before the air reflux. The air reflux are kind of newer condensers. But these Liebig condensers are named after a 19th century German chemist. His name was Justin von Liebig. Originally, it was invented by someone else before him in the 1700s, but it was a tin jacket. And so obviously that was replaced with glass by von Liebig. And as you can imagine, there's more resistance to temperature fluctuations with the glass, so it's a much better design. Um, they have a very basic, straightforward tube vapor path, as you can see in the middle here. We have just a couple of different configurations. You get the ground glass joints, which allows more complex setups. We have our vacuum takeoff model here, so if you want to apply vacuum. We have our fully jacketed Liebig condenser here, so you can stack them up, and that prevents a little bit of, that adds more cooling efficiency. And of course, we have our ACE thread connectors to connect to ACE safe hoses, so it secures more easily, and that can be effective for different applications. And of course, the ACE threads are an ACE invention, which is why they're called ACE threads, and now they're used across the industry with a lot of different companies and a lot of different applications. Um, that's just another showing you another picture showing the versatility of the Liebig. This is obviously in a horizontal fashion. This is for simple distillation, and of course it can be used vertically for reflux. So this is the West condenser. It looks almost exactly like the Liebig. It's a funny story. I'm not sure if it's true, but they say that the English changed the name from Liebig. And you know, the English and the Germans, they say the English didn't like the Germans, so they both had, you know, the best chemists in the world. So again, not sure how true that is, but it's basically the same thing as a Liebig. It's going to have a thinner build. It's going to make cooling more efficient. It's got a lower vapor volume in the tube that reduces the distance the heat needs to travel from the vapor to the coolant. Like our Liebig, we have a variety of configurations, hose barbs, jacket lengths. We have a version here all the way to the left. The Ace Thread 6024 series has got a groove in it that can secure with an O-ring and a bushing to an Ace Thread adapter, and that's effective for a pressurized system. I have a picture of this setup a little bit later that I can show you, but you know, to the right you can see the taper joints with the Ace Safe thread, and of course fully jacketed. So this is more efficiently cooled than the I'd say the air reflux, so you can handle lower boiling points. And so just to throw a random number out there, this is not exact, but let's say you can handle 150 with the air reflux. With these, you can probably handle somewhere around 100 C and higher. We have the Allihn condensers or bulb condenser. This one is preferred for refluxing, as you can see with the bulbs or the constrictions, however you want to look at it. You're going to have an increased surface area. So that's going to increase the cooling capacity. You know, and as is common with the others, right here with these diagrams that I'm showing you, the white area is going to be the vapor path and the blue is going to be the coolant. As you can see, we have different configurations. With this one, you can't use it horizontally because, as you can see, you can have some pooling or condensate buildup in the bulbs. So you're not going to use it for distillation. You can probably orient it up to, well, you can, as you can see here to the right, 45 degrees for a hood space limitation, but anything more than that, you might run into some problems. And so this is going to be a little bit more efficient with cooling than the Liebig or the straight tube design. To throw an arbitrary number, let's say the Liebig West could handle 60 degrees Celsius or higher. Again, arbitrarily, we could say this can handle boiling points of about 60 degrees C or higher, so more volatile solvents. But of course, that depends on a number of things. So the area, the size of the coolant, the cooling ability of the coolant, so what coolants you're using, and the area of the condenser itself. Here we're getting into a much better design. So we have the Graham condenser, which is the condenser all the way to the left. It's not technically considered a coiled condenser. These two to the right are the two more improved designs over this Graham condenser. These are considered coiled condensers because the actual coolant is running through the coil. But the Graham condenser itself was designed around the same time as the Liebig condenser. That's going to maximize the surface area. You're still going to have the surface area of a straight condenser like the Western Liebig, but now you have the added area of the coils. So again, this is similar to the Allihn condenser or the bulb condenser. You can only mount it vertically. If you mount it horizontally, you're going to have pooling, condensate buildup in the coils. Not so much with the ones on the right, but again, it's an improved design. It has its limitations because of that thin vapor path in the middle with the Graham. You can have some pressure buildup that can. So if you have a narrow path that way, and you have, let's say, condensation coming back down the same path that the evaporation is happening, that can cause some clogging, some buildup. Occasionally, it could pop off the taper joints if you're not careful. So you do want to use a cooler coolant with this glycol mixture, even nitrogen. Just always recommend slowly introducing hot vapors if there's a large temperature difference between the coolant and the vapors. We don't recommend surpassing a delta T or a temperature difference of 80 C between the glass and the vapors as to not compromise the integrity. For more on that, you can watch one of our other glass safety seminar videos, which is on YouTube, and where Fiona discusses that. One of my colleagues discusses that a little bit further. To the right, we have our reflux coiled condenser. So this is improved because the vapor path is the entire cylinder, and the coil in the middle is where the coolant's running through. So there's less constriction, less of a blockage to the condensation happening. It's going to be a little easier to clean. With all of these, we recommend you clean them, right away. So this is an improved design. It's very similar to the Dimroth. Dimroth, won't have the jacket on the outside, but it's got that coil design. And then we have the Friedrich, which is heavy in glassware. This might be overkill. This condenser has the cold finger in the middle, has the fat coils. The vapor path is on the outside, but it's extremely effective for cooling very volatile solvents. Solvents with lower boiling points, higher vapor pressures. So it's got a lot more cooling power. And just to go through this pretty quickly, these are other coiled condensers. They're high efficiency for pilot plant applications, larger volumes, volatile substances. Here you have this design. It's different at the bottom. You got more coils to cool the vapors coming up, larger volumes right away. Here we have an ACE glass invention. We basically just took a coiled condenser and turned it for height limitations, hood limitations. And we also have to the right our bullfrog condenser, which is also extremely effective for pilot plant applications. It's commonly used also with rotary evaporators. But this is, this is going to be condensed down. It's going to be really good for those height restriction. Cold finger. So these, you basically pour the coolant in the middle, right? So the vapor path is here. This is good for liquid nitrogen and extremely cold cooling. Dry ice, acetone slurry. It's going to be very effective for vacuum distillation where you need lower temperatures, and it's used very commonly as a cold trap to protect vacuum pumps. So you can also use this in rotary evaporation. You just have to. Your only limitation is you have to keep it with the dry ice slurry or with nitrogen. So you just have to be a little bit careful with it. Again, with a condenser like this, don't exceed the recommended delta T of 80 C, the temperature difference with the glass and the solvent, so you don't compromise the glass integrity. And here you're just looking at the evolution of the different condensers. So you got your straight tube, you get increased area as you go to the right, more effective cooling. And I'm going to just run through this really quick because we're running out of time. These are two examples. So to the right, we have a Miller-Urey experiment. That's a 1950s experiment, basically simulating the Earth's atmospheric conditions. You got lightning here, which is the discharge of lightning. Well, it's simulating lightning and you have your gases, your inorganic gases. So you got your H2O, your ammonia, your methane. So I had a customer who was basically doing this in the lab in a more horizontal fashion, was having issues with the water, um, which was supposed to represent the ocean. When it evaporates, it was getting into the vacuum pump. So he went ahead and put a cold finger here, and that protected his vacuum pump, and that solved that issue. And as you can see here, he's got a Liebig condenser to condense. Here to the right is another customer who was having flooding issues. So with flooding, you have excessive vapor that carries up, and it prevents the condensation from coming down. So you get all this liquid that's kind of stuck in the condenser. So we recommended that you increase the surface area. And one way you could do that with this is a Dimroth. These are two Dimroth condensers. You could stack two more condensers on top in series, or reduce the volume, obviously at the bottom that you're boiling, reduce the heat if it's very volatile, or get a new round bottom, get a much thicker, larger condenser going up the middle, and that's going to improve your refluxing. Here's just a reminder that you have different options. You have straight hose barb connections. Can be The one in the middle can be an issue with coolants. So we have the hose barb to the left with the ace thread. And on the right, we just have an example of a Liebig or West condenser secured into a pressurized unjacketed filter reactor with the ace thread. So that's going to prevent blowout and secure that condenser nicely. So now that we have about 11 minutes, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining. And just to remind you that we do this every third Thursday of the month. The next Ace Your Science webinar series is going to be held on June 19th by Dr. Fiona Usher on pressurized glass, which is an ACE glass specialty. And just to remind you, this is going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So make sure to follow us on our social media channels as well. And if you want to watch this again later for some of the information, feel free to access it that way. So let's see if we have any questions to run through. And if I can't answer them today, I'll do my best to get back to you. My email address is a_SOTO@aceglass.com, but you can also reach out to us at AceGlass. So let's see, are all your jacketed condensers available with an ace thread option? Yes. Yes. So the only condensers that wouldn't be available with an ace thread option would be the non-jacketed options, obviously, which would be our air reflux. But yeah, all of them from our West Liebig to our air reflux, they do have an ace thread option, whether it be in the jacket itself for the coolant or the bottom to secure the inlet of the actual condenser. So I need to distill some individual wastewater that contains volatile and miscellaneous traces of petroleum products. Will be vented off to the atmosphere. So I'd have to look into this a little bit more, but I think something like a Liebig or a straight condenser, or even a reflux condenser, one of the coiled condensers would be effective for an application like this. But I can confirm that for you. I have your email address. Let's see, another common, can add a couple more common questions. Just a reminder, correct way to connect the coolant to the hoses of the condenser would be to connect the coolant inlet to the bottom, to the lower part of the condenser, and the outlet where the water or the coolant's coming out would be to the top, so that the jacket fills with the coolant from the bottom up and you don't get any air pockets. This also maximizes cooling and prevents thermal stress on the glass. Again, to run through some of the more typical coolants, used with borosilicate condensers. You can have tap water, which I think is the most common. With some substances requiring lower temperatures, you can do chilled water. You can use a chiller. You can also use water glycol mixture. Um, Borosilicate glass is, of course, just remember if you're using or nitrogen or the dry ice and acetone slurry to just be careful with that delta T change. And of course, to avoid stressing the glass too much with heat itself. So we don't recommend at Ace Glass that you heat up to 400 degrees Celsius for long periods of time, maybe a short period of time. But really, the 250 mark is if you're going to do it for a while. I think 250 degrees Celsius is around the temperature you'd like to stay at. How to properly clean the borosilicate condensers. Well, as I mentioned earlier, you're probably going to want to clean them right away to prevent any kind of hardening. Use compatible solvents with what you're working with. A lot of the times, just Alkanox or standard detergent would be recommended. Sorry, that's my dog. You can then rinse that with a DI water and an acetone or ethanol mixture, which is pretty common just to speed up the drying. Remember to inspect for any chips or cracks, scratches, especially around hose connections and ground glass joints. Damaged glassware obviously can present a lot of issues, but it should be professionally repaired and handled appropriately. And that is something that we touch on a little bit more on our last glass safety webinar, which is available on YouTube. Remember to store condensers carefully. So if you can store them in a padded drawer or a specialized rack to avoid any kind of shock and breakage, that's recommended. If they have ground glass joints, make sure they're clean, especially if you're putting some kind of jelly on it or silicone. Let's see. So yeah, common issues. We've discussed some of that. Make sure that the coolant is connected correctly. Is the coolant cool enough? Is there a large enough temperature difference between the vapor and the coolant? That's extremely important for condensation. The condenser type. So make sure that you're using the right condenser. It might not be, some of the condensers we discussed at first may not be efficient enough for super volatile, high vapor pressure or low boiling point solvents. So just make sure you're using the right condenser. Don't heat too vigorously. I showed you an example in the last slide where there was too much heating and there wasn't enough cooling surface area, which presented the flooding issue and refluxing. The leaks, inspect all the hose connections, make sure they're tight. And of course, breakage. Just, if it's broken, you might want to look into handling that. And let's see, just remember safety precautions when you're working with the borosilicate condensers. Just wear appropriate PPE, whether it's safety glasses, goggles, gloves. Again, inspect all the glassware. Make sure you secure your setup. Correct all the coolant connections. Work in a fume hood if you can. As I mentioned with the gram condenser, depending on your vapor path, just prevent pressure buildup, and that depends on how much you're heating. Your vapor path, how much you're cooling. So just keep that in mind so you don't have any pressure buildup and explosions. And I don't have any other questions here that I can see. So thank you for joining. If you have any other questions, please just feel free to reach out to us. And again, a reminder that the third Thursday of every month, we have the Ace Your Science webinar. The next one is on pressure glass. And yeah, it's been a pleasure being able to present for you. So please stay in touch, and and I'm going to now end the session. So thank you very much.